The low hum of conversation mixed with the soft clinking of whiskey glasses as the heavy scent of cigars lingered in the air. The room was dimly lit, bathed in shades of amber and gold from the overhead chandelier. Velvet curtains lined the walls, absorbing the sound and creating a sense of intimacy despite the tension hanging in the air. At the center of the room was a poker table, surrounded by men in tailored suits and women in elegant dresses. But the real tension wasn't coming from the game, it was coming from the pair seated across from each other. Daniel, dressed in a sharp black suit, leaned back in his chair, a slight smirk curling the corner of his lips. His dark eyes were fixed on the woman sitting opposite him, who held a pair of cards between her slender fingers. Sofía, stunning in a red silk dress that clung to her figure, met his gaze with an expression of calm detachment, but her eyes betrayed the storm beneath the surface. "Still trying to read me?" Daniel asked, his voice low and edged with amusement. Sofía's lips curled into a faint smile. "I don't need to read you, Daniel. I already know how this ends." Daniel's smirk deepened. "Do you?" A man to Daniel's left pushed a stack of chips toward the center of the table. Sofía's eyes flicked toward the growing pot before she slid a single chip between her fingers. "All in," she said softly. A hush settled over the room. Daniel raised an eyebrow, his gaze sharpening. "Confident tonight, aren't we?" Sofía leaned forward slightly, the neckline of her dress dipping just enough to draw his eyes downward. "Careful, Daniel. You know how dangerous confidence can be." Daniel's eyes darkened. "I think you like danger more than you admit." Sofía's gaze remained steady, cool. An hour later, the table had thinned out. Only Daniel and Sofía remained, with a sea of chips between them. The room had grown quieter, the other players having drifted away, sensing that this game had become personal. "We could end this now," Daniel suggested, his voice smooth. Sofía's eyes narrowed. "What's the fun in that?" Daniel leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "What are you really playing for, Sofía?" Her fingers traced the edge of a chip. "The same thing you are. Control. And if you lose?" Sofía smiled slowly. "Then I suppose you'll own me." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Dangerous bet. Life's no fun without a little danger," Sofía replied. Daniel's hand slid towards the pot. He studied her closely, searching for any sign of hesitation. There was none. "Show me your cards," he said. Sofía's smile widened. She turned her hand over, revealing a perfect flush. Daniel's eyes flashed with both admiration and frustration. "You played me," he said. Sofía leaned back in her chair, a smile like a blade. "You let me." Daniel chuckled darkly, standing up and buttoning his jacket. "You always were a dangerous woman, and you were always too willing to take the bait," Sofía replied. Daniel circled the table slowly until he stood behind her chair. He leaned down, his lips brushing close to her ear. "One more game," he whispered. Sofía's breath hitched. "What are the stakes?" Daniel's fingers slid along her bare shoulder. "Everything." The room emptied out. A single lamp cast a golden glow over the poker table. Daniel and Sofía faced each other once more, the tension between them electric. "What happens when someone wins?" Sofía asked. Daniel smiled faintly. "We find out." Sofía shuffled the cards with practiced ease. Dealer's choice. Daniel took his seat. "High stakes." "Of course," Sofía replied. The game began slowly. Each play measured, calculated. Their eyes never left each other. Each raise, each call was a silent challenge. Sofía slid her hand along the table, her fingertips brushing against Daniel's wrist as she took her cards. "Distracting," Daniel murmured. "Only if you let it be," Sofía replied. Daniel's gaze darkened. "You know I'm not good at following the rules. That's what makes you dangerous," Sofía whispered. Daniel raised the stakes. Sofía smiled. "All in." Daniel's hand hovered over his chips. "Do you trust me?" Sofía asked. Daniel's gaze sharpened. "That's the problem." Sofía's eyes gleamed. "Cool." Daniel turned over his cards. A straight. Sofía's lips parted as Daniel's smile widened. "Now what?" Sofía asked. Daniel stood and circled the table, stopping just behind her chair. His hands rested on her shoulders, sliding down her arms until his fingers laced with hers. "Now," Daniel said, his mouth brushing against the side of her neck. "You owe me." Sofía's breath hitched. "And what are you going to do about it?" Daniel's lips curved against her skin. "I'll show you." Hours later, Sofía woke up tangled in sheets. Daniel's side of the bed was empty. A single poker chip sat on the pillow beside her. She picked it up, turning it over in her hand. A knock at the door. Sofía wrapped the sheet around her and opened the door. Daniel stood there, his suit jacket slung over his shoulder. "Round two?" he asked. Sofía smiled. "You never learn, do you?" she said. Daniel's gaze softened. "No, but I'm willing to lose everything trying." Sofía pulled him inside. "This time," she whispered, "I play to win." But as Daniel leaned in to kiss her, Sofía's phone vibrated on the nightstand. She picked it up. "Unknown number. You played well tonight, but the game isn't over." Her heart raced. "Unknown number. We raise the stakes tomorrow. Midnight. Be ready. Sofia's eyes widened. She looked at Daniel. Who was it? He asked. The real player, Sofía whispered. Daniel's expression darkened. Then I guess it's time to change the game.